in the first regular session of the 17th Congress is hereby called to order. Senator Grace Poe will lead us in prayer.
Sa ngalan ng Ama, ng Anak, ng Espiritu Santo. Amen. Panginoon, sa panahon ng pangamba, Ikaw lamang ang aming tanggulan. Inilalapit namin sa iyo ang mga kababayan naming nasawi at nasugatan sa pagsabog sa Davao noong Sabado ng gabi. Kalingain mo po ang mga biktima at ang kanilang mga pamilya. Paghilumin mo ang sugat ng kanilang katawan at kalooban. Bigyan mo po ng katahimikan ang aming bayan. Ipagkaloob mo po sa amin ang kapanatagan ng isip at kalooban. Tiyakin mo po sa lahat ng oras ang aming kaligtasan. Sa panahong ito ng pagsubok, dalangin namin ang iyong patnubay. Bigkisin mo po kami sa pagkakaisa. Gabayan mo kami sa paggapi sa karahasan. Balutin mo po ng ilaw ng inyong pagmamahal ang aming mga pamilya at pamayanan. Ipagkaloob mo, Panginoon, ang kapayapaan sa aming bayan. Amen.
Amen.
Sa ngalan ng Ama, ng Anak, ng Espiritu Santo. Amen.
The Senate Choir will lead us in the singing of the Philippine National Anthem, and then they will also render a song entitled Bayan Ko.
Sa langit mong bugaw, may lagang tula at awit sa
Thank you to the Senate choir. Secretary, please call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senator Sangara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano, De Lima, Dulon, Ejercito Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Hunasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Ligada, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Po, Recto, Soto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Soveri, Senate President Pimentel.
With 21 senators present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum.
Mr. President,
Majority Leader.
I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the 16th session, Wednesday, August 31, and consider the same as approved.
Is there any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Thank you. Mr. President, would like to acknowledge the presence of 31 officers from the Singapore Foreign Service and other ministries of the Singapore Civil Service. They are visiting the Senate of the Philippines as part of their Foreign Service familiarization tour of the ASEAN region. The delegation is headed by Mr. Edgar Pang, Deputy Director of the Consular Directorate of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Singapore. And they are, of course, accompanied by Her Excellency Kok Lee Peng, Ambassador of Singapore to the Philippines. Also, we have the new PLLO, Secretary Adelino Sitoy, Presidential Advisor on Legislative Affairs and Head of the PLLO, together with Asek Astrabel Naik from PLLO, Mr. President. We'd like to acknowledge their presence in the Senate.
Welcome to our friends from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Singapore, headed by the Deputy Director of the Consular Directorate, Mr. Edgar Pang, and of course to our friend, Your Excellency, the Ambassador of Singapore, Your Excellency Kok Lee Peng. Welcome to the Senate, and also Secretary Sitoy, the new head of the PLLO, and to his Assistant Secretary Astrabel Naik. Welcome to the Senate.
Mr. President, the Senate would like to greet Senator Grace Poe a very happy birthday. She celebrated her birthday just a couple of days ago. So maybe have a 1-minute suspension to greet the distinguished lady.
To greet our colleague. Session is resumed.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Bills on first reading. Number 116, entitled An Act Strengthening Workers' Right to Security of Tenure, amending for the purpose Articles 106, 109 of Book 3 and Articles 294, 279, 295, 280, 296, 281, 297, 282, and 298, 283 of Book 6 of Presidential Decree number 442, otherwise known as the Labor Code of the Philippines, as amended by Senator Joel Villanueva.
Referred to the Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development.
1117, an act institutionalizing a new registration scheme for motor vehicles, amending for the purpose Sections 3 and 5 of Republic Act number 4136 as amended, otherwise known as the Land Transportation and Traffic Code, and for other purposes. Senator Recto.
To the Committee on Public Services.
Resolution. Resolution number 123, urging the Senate Committee on Social Justice, Welfare, and Rural Development to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the implementation of economic effects of the Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino program, with the end in view of reviewing, amending, or revising the current poverty alleviation programs and policies of the government. Senator Joseph Victor Ejercito.
To the Committees on Social Justice, Welfare, and Rural Development, and Finance.
Communications. Letter from the Government Service Insurance System submitting to the Senate the report on the GSI's investment portfolio as of December 31, 2015, in compliance with Section 36 of Republic Act number 8291 or the GSIS Act of 1997.
To the Committee on Government Corporations and Public Enterprises.
Letter from the People Broadband and Telecommunications Corporation submitting to the Senate the acceptance of Republic Act number 10822 by grantee pursuant to Section 9 of Republic Act number 10822.
To the Committee on Public Services.
Letters from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas transmitting to the Senate copies of the following certified and authenticated BSP issuances in compliance with Section 15A of Republic Act number 7653, the New Central Bank Act. Circular letters numbers CL-2016-035, 036, 037, 038, 045, 046, and 047 dated 4, 11, 13, May 2016, and 6, 9, 10, June 2016, and Memorandum number M-2016-006 dated 17 May 2016.
To the Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies.
Mr. President,
Majority Leader.
there are 3 members of the Senate who wish to take the floor this afternoon. Senators, namely Senators Bam Aquino, Senator Mick Subiri, and Senator Richard Gordon. So, to speak on a matter of public interest, may we first recognize Senator Bam Aquino, Mr. President.
Senator Aquino is recognized to speak on a matter of public interest.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. Maraming salamat, Majority Floor Leader. Mga kaibigan, mga kababayan, pinabati ko po kayong lahat. Today I stand before you outraged by the cruel act of terror perpetrated in Davao City last Friday night. Mr. President, matindi po nating kinokondena ang nangyaring pagbomba sa Davao City kung saan higit sa 6 na po ang napinsala at 14 ang namatay. At nakikiramay po tayo sa mga biktima at sa kanilang mga pamilya. Nagkakaisa po ang ating buong bayan sa mga Davaoenyo. In the halls of the Senate, Mr. President, our colleagues refer to me as the gentleman from Tarlac. But the truth is, I may very well be called the gentleman from Davao as well. Unbeknownst to many, my mother's family is from Davao. And unlike my father's side, which is a family of public servants, my mother's side is a family of educators. My grandparents moved to Davao from Luzon after the Second World War to help start and develop the University of Mindanao. Ang lolo ko po, si Segundo Aguirre, ay naging principal ng University of Mindanao at ang lola ko na si Victoria Aguirre ay naging chairperson ng Filipino Department po doon. Sa Davao po lumaki at nagtapos ang aking ina. Sa Davao po niya nakilala ang aking ama habang sila ay nagtatrabaho sa Davao branch ng SGV. Davao po ang setting ng kanilang love story at Davao rin po kung saan sila kinasal. Growing up, I spent summers in Davao with my grandparents, and to this day, we have loved ones living in the crown jewel of Mindanao. So, Mr. President, you can imagine that when we heard of an explosion at the bustling night market, when we heard of injuries, when we heard of the fatalities, our chests tightened and we were engulfed with worry. For many of us with loved ones in Davao City, our gut reaction was to think about them and ask about their safety. But when the dust settled and our loved ones were finally accounted for, worry turned to outrage and outrage turned to anger. It breaks my heart, Mr. President, that this orchestrated attack, a terrorist attack, was perpetrated by fellow Filipinos. It infuriates me that these extremists attacked innocent civilians at the popular night market, where couples go on dates, friends meet up to get a massage after a tough week, and where families eat out and spend quality time together. It enrages me that these agents of hate chose to attack innocent civilians at the night market on a Friday night, one of the busiest nights of the week, a night that could earn them the highest number of casualties. This was a well-thought-out, malevolent assault that hoped to kill and injure as many innocent Filipinos as possible. And the final tally, Mr. President, over 70 were injured and 15 of our countrymen are dead. And they are more than just numbers, Mr. President. They are Filipinos that have laughed, cried, loved, and lived. They are brothers, sisters, mothers, and fathers. They are people who brought pride and joy to their families, and now their passing brings immeasurable grief. One was a single mother, a former OFW working as one of the night market's therapists while waiting for another opportunity to work abroad. Her name was Ruth Mericido. One was a senior education official of CHED in ARMM who strongly supported the Mindanao peace process. His name was Pipalawan Makakua. One was a teacher, a wife of a pastor, and a mother. Another one was her 14-year-old son. Their names are Melanie Faith and Daniel Josh Larida. Those are only 4, Mr. President, 4 out of 15. But these 15 are a loss to our nation. And more than that, Mr. President, they are a loss to their families. There are no words to describe the horror and the anguish one endures when a loved one, when a family member is taken in senseless violence. And understandably, there are a variety of reactions to the blast, ranging from grief to anger, from fear to confusion. There are roars of outrage and prayers to a higher power. There are flowers, there are hashtags, there are profile pictures, there are candles. But Mr. President, it's been 3 days since this attack, and if I may, I wish to propose some ways we might move forward together as a nation. The first is to build our strength. We need to support our policemen and the military. We need to support them as they conduct investigations, arrests, and find and convict these terrorists. In a previous budget hearing, Senator Honasan whispered to me that we should stop asking the impossible from our armed forces and our police. We should stop asking them without the requisite resources that they need to be able to do the tasks that we ask of them. These tasks and missions that we demand of our policemen and soldiers must be coupled with the appropriate resources. So let us equip them with the necessary support so they may address crime and terrorism and deliver justice and safety for our fellow men. Second, Mr. President, is vigilance. Now more than ever, we need to be hyper-aware of our surroundings, of potential threats to our physical safety. But Mr. President, aside from physical safety, we also must be vigilant, not just of unattended bags and suspicious behavior, but also of the misinformation that's been going around the internet and going around Philippine society. Sadly, Mr. President, there are groups that are misinforming Filipinos and spreading conspiracy theories that seek to use this crisis to intensify our division. With lives and our way of life at risk, we must be wary of the information we base our beliefs and actions on. We must be vigilant of misinformation and how it affects our judgment and our prejudices. Let's make sure, Mr. President, that we ourselves share only the information that come from the authorities themselves. And third, Mr. President, we must unite. The objective of terrorism is to create an environment of terror, to make us suspicious of each other, to make it difficult to trust, and to divide our beloved country. Terrorists have hit the hearts and homes of too many nations around the world. In November of last year, gunmen and suicide bombers attacked a sports stadium and a packed concert hall in Paris. In March of this year, Brussels was attacked with bombs targeting the airport and a train station. In July, there were attacks in Germany. In these circumstances, Mr. President, there is usually initial calls for solidarity. But through time, Mr. President, sometimes doubt and fear get the better of the public, and they become suspicious against those of different beliefs and cultural backgrounds that dig into the public consciousness. Will we let this happen to our country, Mr. President? Will we let these acts of terror break us apart? Today, the challenge is to remain united against the true enemy. Because, Mr. President, once there is infighting among the citizenry, then terror wins. Now more than ever, we need to work together to synergize all the organs of government, our civil society, and our citizenry to ensure that this does not happen again. In the short term, let's set aside politics and provide authorities all the resources that they need to combat these perpetrators. And for the long term, we here in the Senate must lay the foundation for a future free of terror because of inclusive growth and peace and prosperity for all. We do this for those who were killed and injured in Davao. We do this for our soldiers fighting for our freedoms. We do this, Mr. President, for every Filipino. The Philippines has endured typhoons, earthquakes, floods, and countless natural calamities. And in those moments, Mr. President, the Filipino people never cowered and instead banded together to gather donations and distribute aid. Today, our enemy, unfortunately, is more sinister, more calculating, and more strategic. Now more than ever, Mr. President, we need to unite in goodness to build a future that is bright, peaceful, and full of hope. Maraming salamat, Mr. President. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Aquino.
May we recognize Senator Mig Subiri, Mr. President.
Senator Subiri is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you very much, Majority Floor Leader. Majority Floor Leader, being a Mindanao and a Filipino, I would like to condemn in the strongest possible terms the loss of innocent lives over the bombing at the Ross Night Market in Davao City, claiming 15 lives and leaving more than 60 people wounded on the 2nd of September 2016. I happen to be about 140 kilometers away in General Santos in celebration of the Tuna Festival. On September 2, Mr. President, a terrorist attack on Davao City claimed 15 innocent lives and more than 60 unsuspecting people after an explosion in the crowded night market. And they targeted, Mr. President, the innocent women and children. Masseuse. These are many of them were elderly. Masseuse giving therapy to the civilians who were tired and weary that night in Davao, Mr. President. The perpetrators, the initial investigators by authorities revealed that it was an improvised explosive device that was used to perpetrate the attack around 10:30 that evening. The perpetrators, Mr. President, of this carnage should not go unpunished and should be immediately arrested and held accountable by our courts. This tragic loss of life is mourned not only by the Filipino people, but the international community as well. And we call on our countrymen to be vigilant and not allow despicable threats of wanton violence disrupt our normal daily lives. As we mourn the senseless loss of innocent lives in this incident, I ask the Senate, Mr. President, to join the entire nation in condemning this dastardly act of terrorism. The Senate of the Philippines, I'm sure, stands one with the Filipino people as we condole with the bereaved families and the loved ones of those who perished in the said terrorist attack and denounces its reckless contempt of life. Mr. President, I also urge the public to steer clear of unwanted rumors and stay highly alert but calm. I support the President's declaration of state of lawless violence made by the aftermath of this terrorist attack. Through the said declaration sparked concerns that our country is veering towards military rule, the Chief Executive himself denied this, that it would be any type of martial law. He denied this, Mr. President, and assured that it does not involve the suspension of the writ of habeas corpus. The state of lawless violence merely calls out to the military or the armed forces of the Philippines to do law enforcement operations, normally done only by the Philippine National Police. It's precisely for the purpose of suppressing lawless violence, and it is to complement and supplement the capability of the PNP. Kasi kulang naman talaga po tayo ng security forces on the ground, Mr. President. We have nothing to be afraid of. More and much more, we should not doubt the intent of the President. The declaration does not entail the suspension of any rights under the Constitution or set the stage of any martial rule. The three branches of government is still functional. Both houses of Congress are working. We have to take note, Mr. President, that former President Joseph Ejercito Estrada declared a state of lawlessness when he directed the AFP and PNP to coordinate with each other in the deployment of Marines for a temporary period during the infamous Rizal Day bombings in 2000, year 2000. And the Supreme Court upheld the same as well, Mr. President. Former President Arroyo similarly declared a state of lawlessness in 2003 after the bombing of Sasa Wharf and the airport of Davao City at that time. It's my position that now is the best time to support our President, and we should forget politics, Mr. President. I believe that we should unite in this time of adversity in our country to curtail lawlessness and suppress its spread throughout the nation. Mabuhay po ang Davao, mabuhay po ang ating bansa. Maraming salamat, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Subiri.
Mr. President, may we recognize Senator Richard Gordon?
Senator Gordon is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, my fellow citizens, magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Last Friday, September the 2nd, 2016, we all know of the dastardly act perpetrated by lawless elements or what have you. To date, Abu Sayyaf has claimed that they were the ones who perpetrated the bombing. But nonetheless, Mr. President, we were all shocked, we were all pained by the carnage of 14 people and 71 injured. It caused me to write on my Facebook account the following: we commiserate and pray for the people of Davao City, particularly the families of the 14 people killed and the 71 persons hurt as of the latest report. This has happened before in Davao and was probably not unexpected, considering the dastardly actions made previously by lawless elements who are now under unanticipated and effective interdiction from the government. Let us all at this time be reflective, deliberate, and calm as a people. Let us do our share by being constantly vigilant and alert as we continue with our daily normal lives and not allow such heinous acts to deter us from moving forward. For in allowing these incidents to stop our normal way of living, we would have allowed those who terrorize to win. The President, as Commander-in-Chief, has now called out our armed forces to suppress lawless violence. Our Constitution allows him to do so. And taken alone, he is not suspending the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus or proclaiming martial law. The Davao bombing is an act of terrorism by a known terrorist organization that must be outlawed by the full force of the law as provided in the Human Security Act of 2007 and under other anti-terrorism measures. I call on all of us to support the President and armed forces and police forces and their families as well as the victims of these dastardly actions. Mr. President, as we commiserate with the people of Davao, we must remember that this is not the first time, as I said in my Facebook account, that bombings have occurred in our country, let alone the whole world. In fact, in the Red Cross, we have been practicing and we have been trying to organize all the chapters in the communities of our country to be aware and to be alert, have their ambulances ready, have the first aiders ready, so that in case there is an event like this, we would be ready. And in fact, we were there. along with other responders. Mr. President, in Osami City, a ferry bombing occurred in February 25, 2000. 39 were killed. There are many others, sundry items, it's becoming as if it's just statistics. 3 killed in bombings in General Santos, 1 killed in Metro Manila in May 21, Jansan multiple bombings January 24, June 24, 2 killed, Metro Manila, Rizalde, multiple bombings, 22 killed in Metro Manila. In Basilan, beheadings near Lamiton Town, 11 killed, including our armed forces. In Pagadian, bus terminal bombing September 4, 2001, 3 killed. Zamboanga, Puericultural Center bombing October 28, 5 killed. General Santos bombing at Fitmart store, 15 killed on April 21, 2002. Zamboanga Karaoke bar bombing October 2, 2002, 4 killed. Kidapawan bus terminal bombing, the list goes on, 8 killed. Zamboanga Mall, 6 killed. Metro Manila, 2002, 2 kills. Zamboanga Fort Pilar, 2002, October, 1 killed. Maguindanao bombing in Datu Piang, 16 killed. Tacurong City, 2002, 9 killed. Kidapawan bombing, 2003, 1 killed. Cabacan, North Cotabato bombing, February 20, 2003, 1 killed. Cotabato City, Awang Airport bombing, 1 killed in February 20, 2003. Davao International Airport, and I was Secretary of Tourism at that time, and we went over there to really make sure that our tourism would not get hurt, but it did to a certain extent, but we were able to recover. March 4, 2003, 22 killed, and immediately followed by a Tagum bombing on the same day, 1 killed. Davao Wharf, Sasa, was bombed in April, Your Honor, April 2, 2003, 17 killed. The list goes on. Coronadal Public Market, 10 killed in 2003. And I can go on and on. Super Ferry bombing, which is, I'd just like to go to the big ones. Parang Stadium bombing, January 4, 2004, 24 killed. Super Ferry bombing outside Manila Bay, right here, right near Corregidor. 116 killed in February 27, 2004. The list goes on and on. Valentine bombings, 8 killed. And Zamboanga multiple bombings on August 10, 2005, 30 injured. In Basilan Wharf bombing, 4 killed in August 28, 2005, and so forth and so on, culminating in the bombing just last Friday. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I cite this so that we would not become impervious to all this, because I suppose when there are so many killings, it becomes a matter of fact to us. It becomes a matter of statistics. And that's something that I would not like to happen in our country, Your Honor. And because of this, I rise today, perhaps on a question of collective privilege, or to maybe manifest something that we should not be helpless. We will not, go quietly into the night and allow the evil amongst us and within us, not only here but in the entire world, to go without being arrested, being prosecuted, and yes, at times, being killed. At the moment, Your Honor, it will not be unexpected for us to have more bombings. Why? Because we've seen a long list of bombings in the past, bigger than the one in Davao. But at the same time, Your Honor, we must remember that the President has just declared the ceasefire, and the NPA has declared the ceasefire along with the NDF, so that now he is able to address the problem of Abu Sayyaf, which has killed foreigners and caused us tremendous reputational damage. Norwegians killed, decapitated, soldiers killed, decapitated, and so forth and so on. Canadians also, 2 killed. Even Indonesians now kidnapped. And they are paying for wild ransoms, Your Honor. Malaysians. I made a statement when that happened that one of these days, they might take the law into their own hands and do a raid on Anteb. You will recall the raid on Anteb made by the Israelis. 2,000 miles away, they went to Uganda to rescue their hostages. It may not be far-fetched for our neighbors to intervene in our country and try to rescue Indonesian hostages, Malaysian hostages, or even Canadian hostages, or even American hostages, Your Honor. And that is why I stand foursquare in supporting our armed forces in removing what all of us know has become a blight in our country. Talagang matagal na, tagus na sa buto ang ginagawa nito mga tao nangingidnap at pumapatay at nagpuputol ng ulo at lahat. You remember the other day in the Inquirer, a mother of a soldier texted her son, and the answer was, patay na yung anak mo, pinutol ko na ang ulo, at kung pupunta ka dito, puputulin ko rin ang ulo mo. That is impunity. That is ignominy, Your Honor. And that is why, today, in my statement, initially, I cited my Facebook account. And I said that we must support our armed forces and police forces and their families as well. And that is why when the President, declares a state of lawlessness, mind you, not a suspension of the writ, not a declaration of martial law, but a state of lawlessness is declared so that he could add more of our units to man the checkpoints, to go after these malefactors, this evil amongst us, and that we should do so because this is the only thing that they understand at times. Most of the time, in fact. Now, Your Honor, if we do not do so, we would be helpless in this scenario. Now, Your Honor, the declaration of state of lawlessness has no specific review. Under the Constitution, martial law has automatic review. Under the Constitution, Your Honor, the President either comes in person or delivers a letter to the Congress explaining why he has declared martial law. And in the case of the suspension of the writ of habeas corpus, it can only cover rebellion and invasion. In other words, the checks and balances are maintained, Your Honor. Now, in the case of a state of lawlessness, there is no such automatic review, although, of course, we are a co-equal branch of the government. The Senate, the Congress, is a co-equal branch of the government, and under the doctrine of separation of powers, we can do so. And so, Your Honor, I would like to state here for the record that we have a Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations called the Blue Ribbon Committee, which was foisted upon me and I accepted. But, Your Honor, I only say this, if only to assuage those of us who rightfully and perhaps legally will be concerned about the declaration of a state of lawlessness. Some of us are asking for a bill of particulars. Some amongst our people are asking that, this be explained. Well, to my mind, we cannot wait for all these niceties, but we can, in the Senate, open the Blue Ribbon Committee to any complaint, Your Honor, by any citizen, if he feels that he has been aggrieved by a military checkpoint or by any military man or a policeman or any member of the government, to come to the Blue Ribbon Committee at any time, and I've instructed the staff of the Blue Ribbon Committee so to do, to accept any complaint, so that if the police are not doing their jobs by having an internal affairs investigation right away, then the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee is open to that, Your Honor. The legislature's work, Your Honor, the Senate officially specifically, will remain unhampered. We will not allow it to be hampered. We will debate, we will pass laws, we will exercise our oversight functions in order to ensure that the other parts of government do its work properly and within the bounds of law. But, Your Honor, at the moment, there is a big offensive going on, perhaps one of the most major offensives. Because of the ceasefire, we are now able to put in more armed forces in Basilan, and because of that, there is that danger that lurks that they will try to distract the focus of the government by bombing other places. And like I said, we have to be deliberate, we have to be careful, we have to be vigilant against any such attacks. In fact, Your Honor, we have become over-vigilant. A lot of text messages are coming. This morning, I got a text message that says the ASG is targeting UP Diliman. And the other day, yesterday, I had to issue a statement that the Red Cross has not issued any statement that malls are going to be bombed. On the contrary, we should just remain, like I said, leading our normal lives, but making sure that we're alert. In fact, if the Senate President will recall, while we were there in the refectory the other day, the Senate President immediately called our Secretary, Sergeant at Arms, General Balahaja, to the refectory because I intimated that because of the offensive going on, and this was before the bombing, this was before the explosion, that we should be careful here in our own offices here, because we are not relatively sure that we may not be the target. In other words, all of us may be targets, but it doesn't mean that we cannot go on sessions every day. We must really make sure that we promote the necessary security measures that will protect not only us, but more especially the people who come here, and the country as a whole must have that capability. And that is why I'm in support of this move of the President to declare a state of lawlessness, and he has assured us that it is not a state of martial law, it is not suspending the writ of habeas corpus, and therefore, if we want to really eradicate this blight, the budget is about to be here in front of us, and we should see where we can actually give the necessary support by way of peace initiatives, not just a piece of paper in Mindanao about, having a separate homeland, but really the peace initiatives required are the socio-economic initiatives that must be done in Mindanao, particularly in ARM and in other areas. Among other things, education, the social support that is needed to make sure that we can get back the people who have been pained by so many years of being excluded. Rightly or wrongly, they should not feel that, because actually Mindanao has got their seaports, they have their airports that have been improved, Cagayan de Oro and Davao, and soon Zamboanga, and certainly a railroad, hopefully, but it will not stop unless we really come up with the social initiatives that are necessary so that we can get our people better educated, that we can have our people there to get better opportunities in life. And so, Mr. President, I conclude this little discourse, if you will, by appealing to all of us to give this support and to make sure that the armed forces feel that they are not our enemies, or the police feel that they are not our enemies. True enough, there are evil people among the armed forces and among the police agencies of our country, but most of them, great majority of them, and by the way, a policeman lost his life in that bombing. A policeman also was looking for his wife, who just went there and found her dead. So it's important to know that all bombs or all bullets coming from manufacturers do not have a specific address. It is written to whom it may concern, and sorry ka na lang kung tamaan ka. And so, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I withdraw. I finish my discourse today with an appeal to the Lord Almighty for prayers to all our people who have been hurt or being marginalized by what is happening there, and for a quick resolution of the crisis upon us, because, Your Honor, today, Bangkok is not spared from bombings. Even China is not spared from bombings. Europe is certainly not spared from bombings. In fact, they're even imposing a burkini ban in their beaches. They're really going overboard. And it's become a source of great discomfort for the rest of the world. But in the Philippines, we must not give in, and we must make sure that we have that resolve and the support necessary to really quell the problem, both militarily and, above all, socially and, peacefully. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Gordon.
Thank you. Mr. President, I move that we refer the privileged speeches of Senators Bam Aquino, Mig Subiri, and Dick Gordon to the Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs, and secondarily to the Committee on Defense and Security, Mr. President.
There's a motion. Senator Gordon.
1 minute suspension, Mr. Chairman. May I request that for a while? Just a clarification to the
Majority Leader, is it okay? A minute suspension.
I
suspension.
have no objection, Mr. President.
General. Session is resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I rephrase my motion? Well, allow me first to withdraw my original motion, Mr. President. I withdraw my original motion.
The motion is withdrawn.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I now move that we refer the privileged speech of Senator Bam Aquino and Senator Mig Subiri and part of the speech of Senator Gordon to the Committee on Public Order, Dangerous Drugs, and the Committee on Defense and Security. As to the aspect of complaints on abuses, we refer the portion to the Committee on Blue Ribbon, Mr. President.
There is a motion to refer the privileged speeches of Senators Aquino, Zubiri, and Gordon to the Committee on Public Order and secondarily to the Committee on Defense and Security. Any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved. There is another motion to refer the part of the speech of Senator Gordon about receiving complaints against abuses to the Blue Ribbon Committee. Any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
One final motion, Mr. President. I move that the call for a condemnation by the Senate, by the Senators Aquino, Subiri, and Gordon be referred to the Committee on Rules so that we may act swiftly, if possible, today, Mr. President.
There is a motion to refer also the three privileged speeches on the matter of the Senate's public condemnation of the attack in Davao City to the Committee on Rules. Any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are about to take up unfinished business. So before we do that, so that the sponsor and the individual members who wish to propose individual amendments may be ready, I move to suspend the sessions for a few minutes.
Any objection? Hearing none, session is suspended for a few minutes. Meron pala eh. Session is resumed.
Mr. President, we have additional reference of business, I think one or two. So may I move that we proceed with the reference of business? Additional?
Is there an objection? There being none, the motion is approved. Secretary, additional reference of business.
Resolution number 124, a resolution commending and congratulating Jerwin Angkahas for winning the International Boxing Federation World Super Flyweight Championship by Senator Emmanuel Manny D. Pacquiao.
Refer to the Committee on Rules.
Number 125, resolution expressing the sense of the Senate to condemn in the strongest possible terms the loss of innocent lives over the bombing at the Rojas Night Market in Davao City, claiming 15 lives and leaving more than 60 people wounded on September 2, 2016. Senator Soberi.
To the Committee on Rules.
Mr. President, with the consent of the Chamber, I move for the consideration of PS Resolution 125.
There is a motion for us to consider PS Resolution number 125. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
May we ask the Secretary to read only the title of the measure without prejudice to inserting into the records the entire text of the resolution.
Secretary, please do so.
Resolution expressing the sense of the Senate to condemn in the strongest possible terms the loss of innocent lives over the bombing at the Rojas Night Market in Davao City, claiming 15 lives and leaving more than 60 people wounded on September 2, 2016.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, with the permission of the Chamber, I move to adopt Senate Resolution 125, taking into consideration the privileged speeches of Senators Aquino, Subiri, and Gordon, and that all the members of the Senate be made co-authors and sponsors of the measure, subject to style, Mr. President.
There is a motion to adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 125, subject to style, taking into consideration the privileged speeches of Senators Aquino, Subiri, and Gordon, and making all senators as co-authors of the said measure. Any objection? There being none, PS Resolution number 125 is adopted, subject to style.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill 1112.
Any objection? Hearing none, Senate Bill number 1112 under Committee Report number 1 is in order.
Mr. President, this is the measure postponing the October 2016 Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections. The parliamentary status of the measure is that last Wednesday we have already closed the period of interpellations and opened the period of individual amendments, considering the measure is a substitute bill. So I move that we now resume the period of individual amendments, Mr. President.
Any objection to the motion? There being none, we now resume the period for individual amendments.
Thank you. May we now recognize Senator Angara, the sponsor of the measure, Mr. President, and acknowledge his guests from the COMELEC, Director Jimenez, Executive Director Tolentino, Executive Director Sino Cruz. They're in the gallery.
Welcome to our friends from the COMELEC, Director Jimenez, Tolentino, Executive Director Tolentino, and Director Sino Cruz.
May we now proceed with the
Senator Angara is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Majority Leader, dear colleagues. We thank the COMELEC officials who are here at the request of our colleagues to provide clarity on certain issues. Mr. President, we're now in the period of individual amendments, and regarding Section 1, the leaders of the House of Representatives asked us to consider changing the date of elections next year from the last Monday of October 2017, as provided in the committee report, to the fourth Monday of October 2017, because October 30 is very close to the observance of All Saints' Day. So on page 1, line 10, section 1, to replace the word last with the word fourth, such that lines 9 to 13 shall now read, provided that the Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections on October 31, 2016 shall be postponed to the fourth Monday of October 2017 period. Subsequent synchronized Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections shall be held every 3 years thereafter. So moved, Mr. President.
Mr. President, there is a parliamentary inquiry being, well, the minority leader wishes to pose a parliamentary inquiry, but before we recognize him, may I suggest that the members of the Senate who have, who are going to propose individual amendments be aware of the amendments being proposed by the sponsor because they might have an anterior amendment to such, so that we can facilitate the proceedings, Mr. President. Instead of going back after one individual, we go back again to the same. So at this point, may we recognize the minority leader first. We are on page 1 and we are on line 10, Mr. President.
Senator Recto is recognized.
Yes, Mr. President, parliamentary inquiry. What is the nature of the amendment? Is that an individual amendment or a committee amendment?
It is an individual amendment because it's a substitute bill, Mr. President, because we were told that the substitute bill is already in the nature of a committee amendment.
Correct.
Which is why we have to propose individual
So
amendments.
these are individual amendments. Can the chairman of the committee propose an individual amendment?
Yes, sir.
So this is
Individual.
an individual amendment proposed by the chairman?
Yes, Mr. President. Yes, distinguished colleague.
Okay. Mr. President, I do have an amendment on the same page, line 10. And if I may read my amendment, if this is in order, Mr. President.
Yes, sir, because it is germane to the topic being discussed.
On page 1, lines 10 and 11, section 1, replace the phrase last Monday of October 2017 with the phrase second Monday of May 2017 to read as follows: provided that the Barangay Sangguniang Kabataan elections on October 31, 2016 shall be postponed to the second Monday of May 2017, period. Subsequent synchronized Barangay Sangguniang Kabataan elections shall be held every 3 years thereafter. The reason for this amendment, Mr. President, is that during the period of interpolations, we did discuss the rationale for having elections on whether it should be October, May, in the past, November, so on and so forth. And it would appear that the reason why we do have general national elections and local elections on the second Monday of May is that there is a higher probability of voter turnout and registration. Would that be acceptable to the chairman of the committee?
Before Senator Angara responds, Senator Drilon has a point to raise.
Mr. President, there is a pending motion to amend line 10, the phrase last to be changed to the fourth. That is the amendment on the floor.
Yes, sir.
And therefore, for an orderly discussion and process, may we suggest that we first vote on the individual amendment proposed by Senator Angara, and if it is so accepted, then we proceed accordingly. If it is rejected, we also proceed. But the point is, let us vote first on the motion of Senator Angara as an individual amendment. That's our suggestion.
This is the proposal of the chair. Can I treat the motion of Senator Recto as a motion to amend the proposed amendment of Senator Angara? And then we will ask Senator Angara if he accepts or not. If he does not accept, we put it to a vote. And then between the two clashing ideas will prevail one, and that would be now the pending motion.
That is correct.
Okay. Senator Drilon, is that all right?
Can we have it again, sir? Yes, I agree. Senator Angara should be asked whether or not he accepts. If he rejects, then we vote on the recto
Yes, we
motion.
vote on the recto motion.
Because it has been rejected.
Yes, sir.
If it is again rejected, then we go to the Angara amendment. Yes, sir.
There are two ideas, only one will prevail, and then that will be the pending idea, subject of the motion. Thank you, sir. So, what is now the response of the chairman of
Thank
the
you,
Committee
Mr.
on Law and
President.
Government?
Thank you, Senator Drilon, distinguished minority leader. We appreciate the amendment and the rationale, the thinking behind the amendment, but we regret that we cannot accept the amendment because we are open to moving the subsequent elections in 3 years' time from 2017, Mr. President, to May. And that would meet the criteria set by the distinguished minority leader as to facilitating registration and having an optimum number of people take part in the elections, Mr. President. But for purposes of immediate postponement, Mr. President, I hope our friend, the distinguished minority leader, understands that during the committee this was the consensus to move it to October 2017, as May 2017 was seen as too close to the October 2016 elections, Mr. President. So I regret to say that we cannot accept the amendment of the distinguished minority leader, Mr. President.
Hindi niya in-accept. Okay, the proponent did not accept the amendment to his amendment, so... Majority Leader?
Before we take action on the non-acceptance of the proposal of the minority leader, may I ask which proposal will cut short the term of the incoming barangay officials?
The recto amendment will cut short the term of those elected in October 2017 by 5 months, more or less.
I see. But the proposal of the sponsor, if we postpone for October, the last Monday of October 2017, the subsequent
Okay, excuse me, I
elections
think
will
I
be...
made a mistake. Senator Recto, what's that? Did I correctly answer the question?
Yes.
No, I think I'm sorry, I made a mistake because the recto amendment is the date of the election.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
Mr. President.
Ah,
That is correct.
That's correct. So,
We
Second
will be
Monday of
cutting
May.
short. Yes, and therefore,
Not that
He's
I am
not-
in
no.
favor of extending the terms. I'm just working in the chamber, making amendments to the proposal, because I am against extending the terms of barangay officials.
can we,
Yes.
can we have a minute suspension?
yeah.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, I think we have been clarified no,
Yes.
by your answer now. May we now finally know from the sponsor if he's accepting it or not? He's not.
Yes, I've already stated my
You
position,
already
Majority
stated
Leader,
that you are not accepting
with,
it. Okay.
with regret, we cannot accept
right.
the well-intentioned proposal of the
In that
minority.
case, is Senator Recto appealing to the body? That is the proper procedure. If he's not appealing to the body, therefore the amendment is rejected.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd prefer that we vote as a body. This is a very important election. As I said during the period of interpolations, the barangay and SK elections are unique to the Philippines, Mr. President, and the idea is to always have a higher turnout for registration and voting. Now, historically, we have decided to have general elections on the second Monday of May. And even during the committee deliberations, there were resource persons who said that if the elections were conducted on May during summer, there would always be a higher turnout of registered voters and those participating in the election. And therefore, it is with regret that I would appeal that to the body, that we vote on the motion.
Okay, since the proposed amendment to the amendment has been rejected, we will now have to vote on Senator Recto's proposal. Okay, when you say aye, that means you're in favor of the Recto proposal and the elections will be second Monday of May 2017. Okay, is that clear? Those in favor of the Recto amendment, say aye. Recto amendment, say aye. Those not in favor, say nay. The nays have it. The amendment to the amendment is rejected. Senator Angara is recognized. We go back to now to the motion of Senator Angara.
Yes, may I reiterate my motion, Mr. President, to substitute the word last Monday to fourth Monday of October 2017 regarding the
Any
postponement.
objection to the proposed amendment on page 1, line 10? There being none, the amendment is approved. Senator Recto?
Yes, Mr. President, in preparing to lose that vote, I did propose another amendment on page 1, line 12, section 1. Insert the phrase, on the second Monday of May 2020, and between the words held and every to read as follows. Provided that the barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections on October 31, 2016 shall be postponed to the last Monday of October 2017, subsequent synchronized barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections shall be held on the second Monday of May 2020 and every 3 years thereafter.
Mr. President, we accept the amendment, except that the last Monday, since we just voted on it, be made fourth Monday in the first sentence of the amendment. We just voted on that. But regarding the amendment having it on May 2020, we accept, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Sponsor.
Can the chair now state how the last sentence of the proviso will read?
Yes, certainly, Mr. President. Provided that the Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections on October 31, 2016 shall be postponed to the fourth Monday of October 2017 period, subsequent synchronized Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections shall be held on the second Monday of May 2020 and every 3 years thereafter.
Okay, so there is a motion to amend that second sentence of the proviso, starting with subsequent synchronized barangay all the way to 3 years thereafter, as read by the chairman. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, the next amendment is on Section 3, Mr. President. This is suggested by the former President of the Chamber, Senator Drilon, to clarify the holdover provision of the bill. The new provision should now read Section 3, holdover, until their successors shall have been elected and qualified, comma, all incumbent barangay officials shall remain in office, comma, unless sooner removed or suspended for cause, period. So moved, Mr. President.
There is a motion to amend Section 3 by replacing it with the new section read by Senator Angara. Is there an objection? There being none, the amendment is approved.
Mr. President.
Senator Recto.
Mr. President, on page 2, anterior amendment, Mr. President, on page 2, insert a new section 4 to read as follows. Section 4, Section 3 of Republic Act 6679 is hereby amended to read as follows. Section 3, ban on government projects. The construction or maintenance of barangay-funded roads and bridges shall be prohibited for a period of 10 days immediately preceding the date of election. The provisions of Section 261, paragraphs B and W of the Omnibus Election Code to the contrary notwithstanding.
Mr. President, may I ask for a 1-minute suspension?
Session is suspended. Session is resumed.
Yeah. Mr. President, since we've clarified with the distinguished minority leader and our other colleagues that the effect of the amendment is that the construction and maintenance of non-barangay projects, roads and bridges, shall continue because of their elimination, then we accept the amendment, Mr. President.
So, any objection to introducing a new Section 4 as read by Senator Recto earlier? Any objection? There being none, the proposed amendment is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to our distinguished sponsor. Another amendment on page 2. Insert a new Section 5 to read as follows. Section 5, prohibition on appointments of government officials and employees, the appointment or hiring of new employees, creation of new positions, promotion, or giving of salary increases, remuneration, or privileges in the barangay shall be prohibited for 10 days immediately preceding the election. The provisions of Section 261, Paragraph G of the Omnibus Election Code to the contrary notwithstanding. In the barangay.
We accept, Mr. President.
Is there any objection to the motion or to the amendment of proposed by Senator Recto for the introduction of a new Section 5, which he just read? No, there being no objection, the proposed amendment is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Gordon?
Just collective privilege, Mr. President. Would it be possible for us to have somebody type it on the screen, because it's kind of hard to follow because the amendments are coming in fast and furious, so we can follow. I think it's not asking too much because we are in the information age, and I think we can do that.
The chair has a written guide. Maybe we can also give Senators Gordon and Subiri a copy of the written guide given to us.
But Mr. President, I don't think it's a problem to type it. We do it all the time in other places, but I think it would be better and safer for all of us, because I'd like to vote wisely on these measures and make sure that we know what we're voting on. I think it would be better for
Can we
better
have
legislation.
a few minutes suspension? Session is suspended.
Yung appropriation, anong section? What section it will become? Given the kayo ng Monteveros amendment, what will appropriations become? Numbering, pakitingnan.
Session is resumed. Majority Leader, Senator Drilon wants to be recognized. Senator Drilon is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, as the records and journal will show, during the period of interpellation, we requested for some data on the actual budget and expenditure on the 2015 appropriation and the 2016 appropriation on the SK and barangay election. The good sponsor at that time made of record that the data was not available and therefore we requested that the technical staff in the COMEDEC provide the good sponsor with the appropriate data so that it can be spread on record. We received the required data last Friday, and therefore, at this point, we wish to ask our good sponsor if he's willing to yield to a few questions so that the amendment that we will propose will be based on the responses to the questions that we will raise, which will be spread into the record. With that premise, Mr. President, will the gentleman from Quezon and the sponsor of the measure yield the floor?
Yes, Mr. President. Gentleman from Aurora.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yes, most willing, Mr. President. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, would the good sponsor confirm that the SK registration, and I underscore registration because there's a separate item for election, the SK registration for 2015, last year, for the record is 155,167,000.
Yes, Mr. President, the records seem to bear that out.
All right. Now, has any of this amount been obligated?
No. No amounts, Mr. President.
And therefore, is it correct to say that for the SK registration allotment or budget for 2015, the amount of 155,167,000 is still unobligated and intact?
Yes,
Or
Mr.
was
President.
Sorry?
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay, so it has not been realigned.
No, Mr. President.
All right. So that amount is available.
Yes, Mr. President.
Right. Now, for still on 2015, there is an item for SK election in the total amount of 936,129,000 allotment, or in other words, budget. Would the gentleman confirm that, Mr. President?
Again, Mr. President, that is borne out by the records. Yes.
All right. Now, there was no election for SK in 2015. Was any of this amount of 936,129,000 been obligated?
Yes, the amount obligated for 20 of that amount earlier cited by Senator Drilon, Mr. President, is 34,978,261 pesos and 65 centavos.
The amount was so obligated, 34, just to round it off for easy computation, for the record, a little less than 35 million was obligated for the SK election in 2015.
That's correct, Mr. President, distinguished colleague.
Which election did not take place, Your Honor, for the record?
Yes, Mr. President.
So where did this fund go, or what was it spent for?
Well, the COMELEC had to spend for materials, certain traveling expenses, services, and wages. So we have a breakdown, Mr. President. We're prepared to furnish the good gentleman from Iloilo, the former Senate President, with a copy.
Just for the record, and we just so we can be quick about this, we'll round off the figures. 4.376 million was obligated and spent for wages.
That's correct, Mr. President.
And may we know what these wages are if no election took place?
We were told the COMELEC had to hire casuals during this period, Mr. President.
Casuals?
Yes.
Even if there was no election?
Yes, Mr. President.
And what did the casuals do?
What did they do? What did they do? Ang tanong is, what did they do? Clerical work. Well, according to the COMELEC director, it was clerical work, Mr. President. They were helping sort through papers, among others.
Yeah, but there was no election, so what papers were they sorting, going through?
Yes, we know that. Oh. Pero ano nga ang ginawa specific sa ating what specifically?
Ang susunod, mas malaki pa.
So, Mr. President, they were to assist the election officers and election assistants because according to the COMELEC, they only, in general, have one election officer and one election assistant per municipality. So, when they were undergoing preparations for the scheduled February elections, they had to hire people to assist these election officers and assistants, Mr. President.
The election was supposed to be in February of 2015, if I recall correctly.
Yes, Mr. President.
And for the record, I do not recall anymore, Mr. President, when we officially postponed or canceled the 2015 election. Can the good sponsor help us on that, Mr. President?
Mr. President, for the record, distinguished colleague, Republic Act 10656, which postponed the SK elections to the last Monday of October 2016, took effect in March of 2015.
In March of 2016. Therefore, is it correct to assume that the 4.3 million for wages was for a period of 1 quarter only?
First quarter lang yun. Yes, Mr. President.
Now, how many casuals were hired for 1 quarter?
They don't have the figures right now, Mr. President, but just to give a ballpark figure, it is the total amount spent, which is 4.37 million, divided by 9,400, which is the honorarium or allowance given, Mr. President. Yeah.
Anyway, that has already been spent, so we just want to spread it into the record.
Yes, Mr. President, I understand.
Now, there is also an item for supplies and materials of 29,407,401 pesos and 33 centavos. May we know what is this for? Noting the fact that the elections were canceled on the first, during the first quarter of 2015. So, what did we purchase the materials for?
Mr. President, we are informed that the amounts spent for supplies and materials were for the payment for the purchase or acquisition of various registration and election forms, for supplies and for materials used during the registration period.
So presumably, since these are materials, they were in stock by the end of the year.
Yes, Mr. President.
So why did we have again to purchase in 2016 42.8 million in materials?
Was that also for SK, yung 42? Mr. President, the 42 million that the good gentleman from Iloilo is referring to was to cover both barangay and SK elections.
Okay.
Registration, I'm sorry, registration.
Registration. So that Okay.
Is that 55,000? Traveling expenses? 55,000. Is that correct?
No, just going back to 2015 for the SK election, would the gentleman from Aurora confirm that out of the total budget for SK election of 2015 of 936,129,000, the amount of 901,150,738 pesos and 35 centavos is still available?
Listen, guys. The question is whether the amount of 901 million, Mr. President, is
Still available.
still available. Yes, Mr. President.
It has not been declared and it has not been realigned to other items in the budget.
I was told that it has not, Mr. President.
What? I'm sorry?
I was told that it is not. It has not been realigned.
It is not a vain hope. Huh? It is a reality.
Well, I was told that the money is there and it is not a false expectation or figment of our imagination, Mr.
Okay.
President.
I will accept that, Mr. Chairman, so that there is a balance of about 109 million for SK election in 2015 and 155 million for SK registration in 2015. In other words, there is even a distinction between registration and election, so that the total is over 1 billion pesos for the SK election in SK election and registration in 2015.
We confirm that, Mr. President. Yes.
Now let's go now to now we go now, Mr. President, with the permission of the good sponsor for 2016, current year, and here the appropriation is both for the SK and barangay election registration and election. Now, first, do we confirm that the budget for SK and barangay registration for 2016, for the record, is 506,274,000.
Registration, tama, no? Yes, Mr. President.
And the amount of 75,728,217 was obligated.
That's right, Mr. President. 75 million
75 million
obligated.
was obligated. And of that obligation, of that 75,728,217, the total sum of 32,856,921 was spent for traveling expenses.
That's correct, Mr. President.
Where did, I mean, saan po sila nagbiyahe?
It was for election officers all over the country to travel, Mr. President.
Election officers all over the country traveled for the registration of the SK and barangay elections.
I was some additional information, Mr. President, distinguished gentleman from Iloilo.
Yeah.
These are also mobilization expenses if the election officer has to meet, for example, with the PNP or with the other officials, government officials. These are covered by these amounts.
Okay, we will accept that as long as it is spread into the record. What about supplies and materials? There's an item here, obligation for supplies and materials for the SKN barangay registration, 42,845,502 pesos.
We were informed that these are for registration and election forms, Mr. President.
And these forms are still available, I assume,
Yes, Mr. President.
and can be used next year?
Yes, Mr. President.
Now, so for SK and barangay election, SK and barangay registration for the current year, there is a balance of 430,575,782.
Yes, Mr. President.
All right. Now, just a final item on this matter. For the SK and barangay election for 2016, how much is the budget?
The budget is 5,994,243,000, Mr. President.
Okay, this is both for PS and MOE.
That's correct, Mr. President.
And how much was obligated of that amount for as of say this today?
With a slight rounding off, Mr. President, distinguished colleague, it is 101.7 million pesos.
Of that 101.7 million pesos, 18 million was for wages,
Yes, Mr. President.
and another 18 million was for overtime,
That's correct, Mr. President.
and the elections have not yet taken place.
That's correct, Mr. President, but preparations have started taking place.
For the record, the sponsor had a good smile. So just for the record, the COMELEC spent a total of over 36,038,742 pesos for wages and overtime on a SK and barangay election in 2016, which has not taken place.
That's correct, Mr. President.
Okay. Likewise, for an election, for the two elections which have not taken place, traveling expenses to the tune of 49,389,259 pesos was spent.
That's correct, Mr. President.
There was no election, but there was a lot of traveling.
It would seem so. Again, mobilization expenses, Mr. President.
I will not ask you anymore for the explanation of what we mobilized for because there is no election. And again, supplies and materials of 12,766,891 was spent, but no election has so far taken place.
Yes, Mr. President, but I think they began printing already, other activities, so they incurred these expenses, Mr. President.
There is also an item quite substantial for other services and expenses to the tune of 3,389,565. May we know what is this? For the election that did not take place?
I was informed, Mr. President, distinguished colleague, that these other services and expenses are expenses for payments that are not categorically included in the above stated accounts, such as rental of polling places, lighting facilities, AFP PNP security support, printing of official ballots and other accountable forms, and miscellaneous expenses, Mr. President.
Kakamutan tayo ng buhok dito. Now, so that a grand total for both PS and MOE for 2016 for an election or for the elections which will never take place is 101,719,218 pesos.
Yes, Mr. President, but to clarify, some of these materials will still be used in the coming election.
Now, so that there is a balance for 2016 for barangay and SK election in the amount of 5 billion 892,523,781 centavos.
Yes, that is the unused balance, Mr. President, and we were told the amount is still intact to anticipate a further question, Mr. President.
That is apart from the 430,575,782, which is the balance for SK and barangay registration for the current year.
The gentleman from Iloilo is correct, Mr. President.
So all in all, Mr. President, how much is in the treasury of the Commission on Election for SK registration in 2015, SK election in 2015, SK and barangay election in 2016, and SK and barangay registration in 2016? What is the total sum that today is in the coffers of the COMELEC
I have it there.
that is available for SK and barangay election in 2017?
7.37 billion. The amount requested by the gentleman from Iloilo, Mr. President, is 7,379,387,303 pesos and 6 centavos.
Can we have the figure again, sir?
7,379,387,303 pesos and 6 centavos.
Okay. All right. We are ready with our proposed amendment, having spread that into the record, if the gentleman from Aurora and will so accept now.
Yes, Mr. President, we are ready.
All right. Now, we propose to amend line 4 on page 2, which should now be section 6. Yes, we amend line 4, which will now be section 6, which will read as follows. Section 6. We delete the whole section 4 in the present bill proposed and substitute it with section 6 to read as follows. Use of appropriation. The following appropriations for the Commission on Elections, parentheses, COMELEC, parentheses, shall be considered as continuing appropriations and shall be used exclusively for the conduct of the barangay and sanggunian registration and elections, colon. Letter A, the amount of 936,125,000 pesos appropriated for the Sangguniang Kabataan elections and 155,167,000 pesos in words and in figures appropriated for the Sangguniang Kabataan registration under Republic Act number 10651, otherwise known as the 2015 General Appropriations Act, semicolon, and letter B, the amount of 5,994,243,000 pesos in words and in figures for the Sangguniang Kabataan and Barangay elections and 506,274,000 pesos in words and figures appropriated for the Sangguniang Kabataan and Barangay elections under Republic Act number 10717, otherwise known as the 2016 General Appropriations Act. End of the proposed amendment.
We accept, Mr. President.
Huh? What? What? I'm sorry.
We accept, Mr. President.
Okay, excuse me, gentlemen. So,
I'm sorry. Just a slight correction. The
Yes, sir.
506,274,000 is appropriated for the Sangguniang Kabataan and Barangay registration, not registration under Republic Act 1017, otherwise known as the 2016 General Appropriations Act.
We accept, Mr. President.
to put order to our proceedings, my dear colleagues, there was a pending, before we resumed our session, there was a pending motion for a new Section 5. And
Yes.
we just went back to interpellation so that you could lay the basis for your proposed amendment, Senator Drilon. So can we, and your proposed amendment is Section 6.
No, what is presently Section 4
Yes,
will
sir.
now become Section 6 because of the previous
Yes, sir,
amendment.
but we have not yet approved the new Section 5. So can we, yes,
No,
can,
we have.
no, we have not yet because Senator Gordon wants to read the text of the new Section 5. So,
We did not approve it.
Huh?
We had not approved it yet.
can I double check our records, sir, and declare a minute suspension?
I think we approved that, no?
Session is resumed.
Mr. President,
Before we continue, sir, I'd just like to place on the record the chair was mistaken. The new Section 5 had been approved before we suspended the session before. So, Senator Drilon?
and therefore, the designation of Section 6 is proper for the amendment that we have proposed.
Yes, sir, and it has been accepted by the chairman, so any...
Yes, just
yes, sir.
just for the record, the reason why we have proposed this is to make sure that the appropriation for 2015, which are now, which are still in the coffers of the Commonwealth, and the appropriation for 2016, which will be unutilized as of the end of the year, are considered as continuing appropriation. And what is the significance of that, Mr. President? It may not be declared as savings. It may not be declared, it may not be realigned to other items in the budget. That is the purpose of this amendment, so that we can spread it on the record.
Senator Recto?
Yes, just a clarification, Mr. President. The Constitution, let me quote from the Constitution, on Article 6, Legislative Department, Section 25, Paragraph 5. No law shall be passed authorizing any transfer of appropriations. However, the President of the Senate, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and the heads of constitutional commissions may, by law, be authorized to augment any item in the General Appropriations Law for their respective offices from savings in other items of their respective appropriations. My question is this, with regard to this amendment. I support the amendment, Mr. President. In fact, I had an original amendment which I mentioned during the period of interpellations. Well, if you recall, Mr. President, sinasabi nila, one of the reasons why they wanted to postpone the elections is because of the drug problem. And I debated otherwise. In fact, it is better to continue with the elections, and if many of the barangays are infested with drugs, or those who are supporting drug lords and so on and so forth, and if the issue today is central to drugs, then the barangay elections, I suppose, will continue. Maraming tatakbo, nakakandidato sa kapitan o SK o kagawad, lalabanan din yung droga. So you can wipe out the problem of proliferation. No? Having said that, Mr. President, and in my original proposal, di ilagay for whatever, if kung may savings tayo ng 6 billion, ilagay na natin sa drug rehabilitation. Okay? But I realized it might be unconstitutional because no law can be passed authorizing any transfer of appropriations. Now, having said that, Mr. President, dito naman, use of appropriations, and I support this initiative. In fact, based on the questions raised earlier, of the budget for the SK and for the barangay, malaking pondo na ang nagastos. And if we're saying that the elections would have been 7 billion if we did it today, if you don't have the elections today, based on this constitutional provision, pwedeng i-realign ng head of agency. So, posible next year, plus 7 billion, 14 billion na yung election, when it could have cost us only 7 billion if we did not postpone it. Sayang, Mr. President. And like I said also during the period of interpellations, nothing will stop the future Congress also again from postponing the elections next year. Halimbawa, sasabihin, may chacha, may con-con o con-as, pwedeng i-extend ulit. Nagiging habit na natin yung postponing barangay elections, Mr. President. Now, in this amendment, would it not, in effect, could it curtail the ability of the head of agency to augment other provisions in their budget? Because the heads of agencies can realign or can augment, yes. Halimbawa, will this work, Mr. President? That is the point. At the end of the year, can the COMELEC still, like they've done in the past, declare, even if we pass this law, can declare savings at the end of the year?
Yes, Mr. President.
So they still can, even if we
I'm
put
sorry.
this, yes.
No, they cannot realign because the premise of the realignment to other items in the budget is that there is savings. Under Administrative Circular number 6-99, signed by Chief Justice Hilarion G. David Jr., it talks about the Fiscal Autonomy Fund, which is what the gentleman from Batangas is pointing to. In other words, validly, he raises the question. Under the Constitution, the head of the constitutional offices can augment other items in the budget. But the premise of that, Mr. President, is that there ought to be savings as interpreted in Administrative Circular number 6-99. The provision, if you will notice, Mr. Chairman, says shall be considered as continuing appropriation. That continuing appropriation will prevent the COMELEC, in our view, from declaring it as savings until the elections, Sanggunian, barangay elections and registration can take place in 2017. So that by the end of 2017, whatever is the unexpended balance can be realigned and therefore can be declared as for whatever purpose. Just the point here is that the appropriation is continuing until the election takes place, and therefore if the matter of their ability to realign is simply postponed so that
in effect, what the gentleman is saying, Mr. President, is that they can only declare savings
after.
By the end of 2017.
That's correct, sir. That's correct, sir.
Right? And having said that, then there is no need to put 6 billion or more in the 2017 General Appropriations Act.
That's correct, sir. That's the purpose.
Now, the reason why I stand and to clarify this is for that particular purpose, to put that on record as well. That, in effect, we are already appropriating by way of a continuing appropriation, by putting it in the law, that there is a continuing appropriation extending the validity of this budget, particularly until next year.
That's correct, sir, for this particular purpose.
And because of that, and there are representatives from COMELEC here, in effect, we are telling them, you cannot touch this money.
Except
you
for the
cannot
purpose.
declare it as savings.
Yes, until the end of the
2017. Okay.
When the elections and the registration have already been done.
Yes. And with regard to paragraph 1, yung that budget was for 2015.
That's correct. That is why I asked during the interpellation if the amount was still intact, and it is a continuing appropriation up to today, as we talk.
Okay, and that is all of this is available.
Yes, we spread that into the record.
Okay, and with regard to that, the 2016 budget is really valid for 2 years.
That's correct, except that if no election takes place in 2016, technically the budget is available if it is not, if we do not clarify it in this manner.
But under the general provisions of the budget, 2016 is valid for 2 years.
That's correct, sir, but there's no harm in putting in this in,
Yes,
in order
and I support this amendment. Huh?
Yes.
And 2015 is valid for 15 and 16. And since it's available, we're extending it by 1 more year.
That's
Just to put
correct,
that
sir.
on the record. Okay, thank you, Mr. President. I support the amendment of the sponsor.
Okay, so there's a pending, there's a proposed amendment from Senator Drilon to replace Section 4, appropriations of the bill under consideration, with a new Section 6 entitled Use of Appropriations, as read earlier. Any objection? There being none, the amendment is approved.
Mr. President, I received a communication from the office of our colleague, Senator Cayetano, for requesting a new Section 7. He would like to propose this specific amendment. Section 7, Supervision. The Department of Interior and Local Government, DILG, shall have strict supervision over barangay officials who shall be covered under this act, period. The DILG shall impose stricter sanctions over those who are inefficient or who have consistently failed to perform their duties, period. So moved, Mr. President.
Because Senator Cayetano is not here, can I ask if Senator Angara is adopting the said proposed amendment as his own?
Yes, Mr. President. We adopt it as our
Okay,
own.
as earlier requested by Senator Gordon, can we flash to the screen the wording of the proposed amendment? So, can we have a minute suspension to encode the proposed amendment? Session is suspended. new section 4 yun, di ba? Became a new section 4. It became a new section 4.
If not, we reject it now.
You are opposing the amendment.
Pati yung anong latest Approve na yan, hold over. Approve na yan. Supervision. How can you impose stricter sanction? And sanction mo nasa administrative code tsaka sa local code. What is a stricter sanction?
We ready to
Okay, session
resume,
is
Mr. President?
resumed.
The parliamentary status, Mr. President, is that Senator Angara, the sponsor of the measure, has adopted a proposed amendment of Senator Alan Cayetano. Therefore, this becomes the proposal of Senator Angara.
Yes, sir.
We have read the proposed amendment, Mr. President. I believe there are members who wish to comment or object to the amendment.
There is a
proposal.
proposed amendment for a new Section 7 entitled Supervision, which has been stated by the sponsor, Senator Angara, and flashed on the screen. Any objection? Senator De Lima?
Thank you, Mr. President. I object to the proposed amendment. Number one, for being not germane to the entire subject matter of the bill. It's therefore a rider. Now, I heard the discussions during the break that perhaps we can consider the first sentence. The DILG shall have strict supervision over barangay officials who shall be covered under this act. Not even that is acceptable to this representation. I think, number one, I would propose that the original proponent of this amendment be allowed, if he wants to explain the rationale for this proposed amendment. And since he's not around, we can proceed to vote on this. I am objecting to the entirety of the proposed amendment for the reasons already stated, not germane and therefore a rider. Now, as to the first sentence, were it not for the word strict, it would be just a surplusage of what is already stated in the current law, and that is the local government code. But there is this qualifying word strict, and I do not understand that. Again, it's not germane to the very subject matter of the pending bill. So I object. Thank you.
Senator Recto?
Mr. President, parliamentary inquiry, or maybe it is in the nature of a point of order. Can the sponsor make individual amendments to his own bill and accept the same amendment?
We're adopting it, Mr. President.
No,
so
actually,
yeah.
my response to the manifestation of Senator De Lima is that there is no need to require the presence of Senator Cayetano because the proponent is actually here. Senator Angara has made the proposed amendment as his own amendment.
So he is moving
To amend. Yes.
and accepting his own amendment.
I don't know if you use the word accept, but that will be the pending matter. There will be a proposed amendment coming
Mr.
from Senator
President,
Angara.
The point that I'm driving at is, Mr. President, I think under our rules, those who want to present an amendment should be present so that we do not have the situation wherein the chairman of the committee accepts the amendment as a personal amendment and in effect proposes an amendment which he himself will accept.
Mr. President,
Majority Leader?
I think there is a misinterpretation. When the sponsor adopted the proposed amendment, he was proposing it to the body, not to himself. It's as simple as
Yes,
that.
it is.
No, if they are wondering, or their problem is, why does the sponsor accept a motion or an amendment from a member who is not here? We have done it in the past. And it's merely a simple adoption of a member. So if you do not want Senator Angara to adopt it, I will adopt it. Then vote it out if you want.
Then,
But
yes,
you know, we have
Mr.
to follow the tradition and the rules in the Senate.
If I may, Mr. President, with the
Senator Angara?
I think what we are doing, Mr. President, is, as you correctly stated, Mr. President, we are adopting Senator Cayetano's amendment as our own, and we are proposing it to the body to be accepted
Yes.
by the body, which is why the presiding officer asks the members present if there is any objection.
It is the body which accepts. Senator Aquino?
Mr. President, since the gentleman from Aurora has accepted the amendment as his own, earlier Senator De Lima questioned the reasons behind this, and if she still wishes, I think that Senator Angara would be willing, since he has adopted this amendment as his own, to explain why he thinks this Section 7 should be included, just as a point of manifestation, Mr. President.
Senator Gordon?
Mr. President, out of parliamentary courtesy to one another, and I would not want to have a senator complain, and I don't want to question whether in fact this is authentically Senator Cayetano's, because I believe in the integrity of my good friend Senator Angara. Can we wait for this? Is this a certified bill, by the way? It's not a certified bill. If it's not a certified bill,
It is not, sir. It
Mr.
is not a
President,
certified bill.
then there's no need to rush to this. Senator Cayetano is on an official visit with the President of the Philippines, and I think he should present this amendment himself so that there will be no recriminations afterwards among friends in the Senate who should really treat one another with candor and respect. So I would like to reset the discussions, if that is possible, Your Honor, for the time when Senator Cayetano comes back, so he can properly defend his proposal. I don't think Senator Angara, unless Senator Angara is willing to, you'll adopt it? But this is not a certified bill anyway.
Are you done with your manifestation, Senator Gordon? Yes. I will allow you to finish, sir.
Yes, Your Honor. I mean, I beg the pardon of the Senate. Senator Angara was talking to me about certain things which I should not have listened to because I'm on the floor. But anyway, it's all right. I forgive him. He's a good friend, and he's very passionate about this bill. Your Honor, the reason why I asked whether this is a certified bill, because if it's a certified bill, we can really move with dispatch on this issue. But I don't want the Senate to move so much so that, one, I don't agree in the first place with the provision. No? I think there is subject to questions, but I would like to know what the intentions are. I would like to know what the intentions are, because I think our colleague Senator De Lima may be correct that this may not be germane at all, and it really is a reiteration of the local government code. A reiteration that the local government code has supervision over all barangay officials in this country. The next sentence is the one that is troublesome, and that's what I'd like to know. I don't think. I hope Senator Angara was able to listen very well to Senator Cayetano when he did this, and I don't know whether he's going to be an adequate spokesman for Senator Cayetano here. I know that he will be, but I don't know whether Senator Cayetano will agree when he comes back, which means that we might have to come in and debate this all over again. That's my manifestation.
So, The chair will declare a suspension to sort out the parliamentary situation because there's an objection but there's a motion to defer ruling on the matter. So session suspended for a few minutes.
Risa. Go na after. After.
Session is resumed. With the permission of Senator Gordon, can I treat your manifestation as just a suggestion, not a motion to defer?
No, I did not file a motion, Mr. President.
Okay, so we can go back now to the pending motion to amend, the pending proposal. Senator Angara,
Mr. President, given the suggestions of our colleagues and given the communication from that there's no need to pursue this amendment, I withdraw my motion, Mr. President.
the proposed amendment is withdrawn. So where are we now?
Anterior amendment from Senator
Recto.
Yes, Mr. President, anterior amendment on page 1, line 20. After the word election, insert a provision that would read as follows. Provided, however, that the term of office of the Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan officials elected in the May 2020 elections and subsequently thereafter shall commence at noon of June 30 next following their election.
There is a proposal to amend Section 2 of the pending bill on assumption of office as read by Senator, as stated by Senator Recto.
With the indulgence of the distinguished minority leader, may I ask him to repeat his proposal,
Yes.
Mr. President?
On page 1, line 20, after the word election, insert a provision that would read as follows. Provided, however, the term of office of the Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan officials elected in the May 2020 elections and subsequently thereafter shall commence at noon of June 30 next following their election.
We accept, Mr. President.
Can I amend it on a matter of style? Can we add the word that after however?
Yes. Subject to style, Mr. President, yes.
Provided, however, that the term of office
Yeah.
plus the appropriate commas.
Yes, Mr. President.
So,
Subject
any
to
objection to the proposed amendment of Section 2 of the bill on assumption of office? Hearing none, the proposed amendment is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. May we recognize Senator Antiveros.
Senator Ontiveros is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Floor Leader. I'd like to propose an amendment respectfully to the good sponsor before the section on implementing rules and regulations, noting that my proposed amendment will be a provision from Section 4 of RA 10632, and its inclusion would ensure continued allocation and utilization for barangay youth-related development activities. So respectfully, Mr. Sponsor, I'd like to propose the insertion of an additional provision, to wit, use of 10% Sangguniang Kabataan Fund. Until the new set of officials shall have been duly elected and qualified, the Sangguniang Barangay shall use the Sangguniang Kabataan Fund solely for youth development program.
Mr. President, we're inclined to accept the amendment, but maybe subject to style also. Maybe the Sangguniang Kabataan Fund as provided for under Republic Act 10632, if that's all right with the proponent, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Can we show on the screen the final wording of the proposed amendment? So,
yes, Mr. President.
a minute suspension. Ano status? Session is resumed. For clarity, may we ask Senator Ontiveros to restate her proposed amendment?
Mr. President, I will restate the proposed amendment. It will now be the new Section 7, use of 10% Sangguniang Kabataan Fund. And it will read, until the new Sangguniang Kabataan officials have been duly elected and qualified, the Sangguniang Barangay shall not use the Sangguniang Kabataang Fund except for youth development and empowerment, Mr. President, except for youth development and empowerment programs as provided for in RA number 10742. Do I hear the minority leader?
We accept, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, it is in RA number 10742.
Can I make a minor amendment with the permission of Senator Ontiveros?
Of course, Mr.
Shall
President.
have been elected and duly qualified.
Yes, Mr. President.
Is that acceptable?
Acceptable, Mr. President.
Shall have been unduly qualified. Is that the normal?
Mr. President.
Is that the normal usage? Elected and duly qualified. That is my my proposal. Okay.
Yes,
So
Mr. President.
accepted by the Senator Ontiveros. Any objection?
Mr. President,
Senator Drilon? Baliktad na.
Just a point of clarification, if the sponsor will yield. The title says, of Section 7 says, use of 10% Sangguniang Kabataan Fund. Where is it something is confusing, because it would appear that the title refers only to 10% of the Kabataang Fund. So can we clarify this? Unless, in other words, what is the intention?
We should remove 10%, Mr. President.
it might cause confusion, Mr. President.
Alam naman nilang 10% eh. So, use of Sangguniang Kabataan Fund.
Senator Ontiveros, what do you say to the proposed amendment to your amendment? Do you
I share
accept?
the concern of the majority leader, Mr. President. First, let's delete 10%. Use of Sangguniang Kabataan
Yes,
Fund.
it will. Okay. Okay, so now, this is now the pending amendment, proposed amendment, a new section 7, use of Sangguniang Kabataan Fund.
Mr. President, with due respect to the Senate President, I believe that Julie should be before elected.
Okay, I withdraw my amendment to the proposed
Anyway, you
amendment.
cannot amend that. You cannot amend it from the chair, Mr. President.
That's why I asked permission from Senator Ontiveros.
That's why. So, if you do not mind, let's put it back to duly elected and qualified. Yan.
Yes, sir.
All right. Yeah, pwede. Oh.
So can I request again, Senator Ontiveros, for the record now to read the pending proposal?
Gladly, Mr. President. Section 7, use of Sangguniang Kabataan Fund. Until the new Sangguniang Kabataan officials shall have been duly elected and qualified, the Sangguniang Barangay shall not use the Sangguniang Kabataan Fund except for youth development and empowerment programs as provided for in RA number 10742.
Yun. Yes. Accepted. Thank you.
Senator Recto.
Mr. President, if the gentlelady would not object, maybe after empowerment programs, comma, such as anti-drug campaign. I withdraw, Mr. President. I withdraw.
Mr.
In any
President,
case, Mr. President, there's an existing list.
Senator Gordon?
if I'm glad he withdrew because I was going to such as including, but not limited to, and for I'm glad the minority floor leader decided to be sober again.
So the pending proposed amendment has...
Mr. President.
The proposed amendment has been read.
Mr. President, just a style point. If we could spell out RA, Republic
RA.
Act, rather than just RA.
Yes. Republic Act. Okay. So, any objection?
Matter of style,
Yes, sir.
can we remove the word for as provided in?
Yes.
Yeah.
In.
If that is
Yes, sir.
acceptable to the sponsor?
You want to put
Yes, Mr. President.
There is a suggestion whispered by the author of RA 10742 to include the phrase otherwise known as the Sangguniang Kabataan Reform Act.
Or as authored by Senator Hill?
As authored by and co-authored and
10742, otherwise known as the Sangguniang Kabataan Reform Act of 2015.
authored by Senator Paulo Benigno Aquino IV, Mr. President.
Okay, we stop at 2015, okay. Any objection? There being none, the proposed amendment is approved and adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. The SK advocates will certainly enjoy hearing the story of the highly participatory process of amending their Section 7. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, just two more amendments. The former Section 5, which is now the Section 8 we see on the matrix or on the screen, pertains to implementing rules and regulations. Upon request of the COMELEC, they were requesting for 60 days rather than 30 days within which to promulgate the implementing rules. I so move.
There is a motion to amend the old Section 5, now Section 8, by changing 30 days to 60 days. Any objection? Senator Drilon?
You know, the election will take place 1 year from now. Why can we make it 90 days? The promulgation of the rules?
If the gentleman is proposing an amendment to the amendment,
Yes,
I accept, Mr. President.
So, the proposed amendment has been amended. It's now 90 days. Any objection? Hearing none, the proposed amendment is approved.
Mr. President, the last amendment, or the second to the last amendment, is pertains to the new Section 10, former Section 7 on the... No, I'm sorry, I correct myself, Mr. President. It's the former Section 8 and the new Section 11, the effectivity clause, to be amended to provide this act shall take effect immediately after its publication in the official gazette or in 2 newspapers of general circulation. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? The proposed amendment is approved.
Mr. President, I think Senator Recto has a proposal for the title.
Senator Recto is recognized.
I'm not extending the term. Mr. President, I'll be kinder for the title, Mr. President. My proposal is that for the title should read as follows. An act postponing the October 2016 Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 9164 as amended by Republic Act number 9340 and Republic Act number 10656, prescribing additional rules governing the conduct of Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections and for other purposes.
We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection to the proposed amendment to the title of the bill? Hearing none, the amendment is approved.
Mr. President.
No other amendments, Mr. President, Majority Leader. No other amendments.
Yes. In the light of the proposal of Senator Gordon that we flash on the screen proposed individual amendments by our colleagues, or a measure. So with the consent of the body, I move that all members of the chamber who intend to introduce their individual amendments be required to submit in advance their amendments to the Committee on Rules. Henceforth, this will allow the Secretariat to prepare the visual aid being asked by our colleagues, especially Senator Gordon, Mr. President. Sometimes, age catches up with us, so we... So move, Mr. President.
There is a motion
Sasubmit tayo.
to require the members of the Senate to submit beforehand their proposed amendments to measures to the Committee on Rules, to give the Secretariat sufficient time to flash to the screen the proposed amendments. Majority Leader?
Soft copy, Mr. President.
Preferably soft copies.
Mr. President, parliamentary inquiry. Does that preclude the members from making amendments that they think of on the floor? Because that is the
simple amendments.
accepted tradition, Mr. President.
Any amendment we can still take up on the floor. We're just facilitating the flashing on the screen, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Majority Leader.
Does not preclude anyone
Mr.
from...
President,
Senator Gordon.
just to clarify, all amendments under the rule shall be submitted in writing. But we cannot preclude amendments on the floor, in which case it's a question of the staff typing the amendment on the floor, on the screen, so that we can really speedily look at it and reflect upon it and vote wisely. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes. So with that, Mr. President, have we approved it?
Can I ask for 1 minute suspension? Just
A minute suspension.
before-
Section 80. Ito na yun, majority. Section 80.
So we're voting na.
Request mo, payag kami eh.
Session is resumed.
Thank you. Mr. President, may I withdraw the motion and instead make it a request by the Committee on Rules that the amendments, if we want it flashed on the projection screen, it is best that they submit their individual amendments in advance to the Committee on Rules. But that does not preclude anyone from proposing amendments on the floor.
So the,
it's just
the request of the Majority Leader as the Chair of the Committee on Rules is hereby noted.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we close the period of individual amendments on Senate Bill 1112 under Committee Report Number 1.
Is there any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, may we request a clean copy from the Secretariat so that we can approve this on second reading tomorrow, Mr. President.
Request is hereby noted, and Secretariat is addressed to prepare the clean copy by tomorrow.
With that, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill 1112 under Committee Report Number 1.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of Senate Bill number 1112 is hereby suspended.
Mr. President, I move to adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Tuesday, September 6, 2016.
Is there any objection? There being none, the session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Tuesday, September 6, 2016.